Teaching with Love and Logic. Love and Logic was created by Jim Fay, David Funk, Foster W. Klein. Jim Fay has been teaching for more than 31 years and has experience as a teacher as well as an administrator. David Funk has experience as a teacher, administrator, associate professor, and conference speaker. Foster W. Klein is a child psychiatrist. Love and Logic is an approach to classroom management. The goals are to raise the level of student responsibility, teach students to think for themselves, put teachers back in control of the classroom, and return a teacher's joy of teaching. The four basic principles of Love and Logic are share the control, share the thinking, balance consequences with empathy, maintain self-concept. I will explain each of these four principles in the next slides. Sharing the control. It's a mixture of who gets the control, how can the control be shared, and the savings account. Fay and Funk say that a majority of control battles in which teachers find themselves can be avoided by sharing control with a simple technique called choices within limits. Who really gets the power in the classroom? The teacher will have control, but they can give students temporary control in the form of choices. Each choice that we give the students is deposited into the savings account. When it is time, the teacher is able to take back control by making a withdrawal from the savings account. If we do not give our students these choices, we are unable to make a withdrawal from the account. We must have choices within limits. The three rules for the choices must be, they must be legitimate, the choices need to be equally acceptable to the person giving them, and the third one, the choices need to be given with equal pizzazz. When I say choices must be legitimate, that means both options must hold the same weight in the eyes of the student. An example would be if you told the students, do you want to do 15 problems for homework or only 2 problems? Obviously, the students are going to go with the second option of only doing 2 problems. So the choices also need to be equally acceptable to the person giving them. Both options need to be acceptable to you, the teacher. Without a doubt, the students will pick the one you do not want them to pick. Looking back at our previous example, the students will only pick 2 problems for homework over 15. So if we knew we didn't want the students to pick 15, we wouldn't give that to them. And the last one, choices need to be given with equal pizzazz. When we're presenting the choices, if we stress one choice over the other, this can be seen as manipulating and control battle may start. We also need to be aware of the tone in our body language when presenting our students with these choices. All right, the next aspect of Love and Logic is sharing the thinking. If a teacher asks a question in such a way that a student focuses on the question rather than on the teacher's emotional overlay, the student's thinking process is more likely engaged than his or her emotional reaction. Emotions will always get in the way of clear thinking. We all know when someone tells us to calm down, it has the opposite effect, and that makes us even more angry. According to Fay and Funk, once thinking begins, calming is not far behind. So if we can start that calming process with our students immediately, we will get the results that we want. Here's an example. Tommy comes into your room and slams his book down and yells, "I hate this school and all of you idiot teachers." You have 2 choices of responding. 1, matching his anger, you tell him to either be quiet or get out of the room. Or option 2, you respond by saying in a calm voice, "It sounds like you're pretty mad, Tommy. I'll be glad to visit you when we are both calm. Would you rather cool off in the room, or do you think someplace else would be better?" In the second option, you are remaining calm and modeling how to respond appropriately and allowing him to think about where he would like to go. Now Tommy is thinking about where he wants to calm down and not about what just made him angry. Here are some magic words and phrases that can be used when we're sharing the thinking with our students. What would you like to happen? Would you like my thinking on that? Is it possible that? How do you feel about that? Is there any chance that? How do you suppose that might work out? What do you think I think? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good a decision do you think that is? Would you like to hear what others have tried? When we ask our students these questions, we are forcing them to do the thinking rather than us doing the thinking, and it helps share that responsibility. The next important part of love and logic is balancing the consequence with empathy. Our students need to feel that we are empathetic with them, that we know how they're feeling, and that what they're feeling is valid. So, the difference between consequences and punishment is where we interpret the pain emanating from. Consequences result in pain coming from the inside, punishment results in pain coming from the outside. So, when we are dealing with our students, we want to make sure that we are giving them a consequence, because the consequence is going to correlate back to the behavior or the action that they displayed. Pain from the outside happens when someone yells, embarrasses us, or imposes various restrictions. Pain from the inside happens when we recognize that we are the ones that caused our own pain. When we realize what caused our own pain, there are only two ways to get rid of the pain. We can do this by waiting until the pain goes away, or we make a decision to change whatever caused the pain. So with our students, we want to make sure that we are not causing them pain. We don't want to make them to hurt. We don't want to make them hurt from the outside. And once students, when they realize that the pain is from the inside, they know that it's on them. They have to change their behavior. And we can help them with the consequences. All right, so now when it comes down to consequences, these are 7 steps that they have come up with that will help administer the consequence to your student. And how do we increase the chances that the students will feel that they are receiving a consequence rather than being punished? There are 2 ways. The first being that teachers can develop the consequence for the infraction, or the student can suggest ways to solve the problems they create. And it's going to be a more meaningful consequence when the student themselves comes up with it. In the book, he gives an example of there was 2 boys who were fighting at recess. And he runs through this process, these 7 steps with the boys, and his right away, he said, I'm thinking right away their punishment is going to be they're going to miss recess for the next 2 days. So he asks the first boy to come back tomorrow. He needs a written letter that he needs to have a paper written about what his consequence is going to be. He tells both boys that. So the first boy comes back and he says that next time he feels like fighting at recess, he's going to go and stand next to the recess aide. And the second boy comes in with his letter, and his letter says the same thing. So the principal he asks, did you come up with this on his own? And he goes, no, I talked to Tommy about it. So the principal says, okay, well, I'll give you till the end of the day, but you need to come up with your own response. So that boy, he thinks about it, and his response is he's going to go and sit on a bench instead. And the principal said, he goes, I never are solutions to the problems. He said, those would not have been my solutions, but those solutions work for each of those boys. So the first step in administering the consequence is you want to make sure the consequence is as close to the time and place of the infraction as possible. So if the students were throwing food in the lunchroom, the consequence should happen during their lunchtime or needs to happen in that room. So if their consequence was they have to help clean up after their lunch class, that would be an appropriate consequence. The next one is give the student the opportunity to be involved in the solution / the decision making. So you're going to have the student come up with a list of solutions. You'll just ask them, what do you think we should do? And if they won't provide them or they can't come up with their own, then that's when you can step in and give them a few choices for them to select. And the next one is administer consequences with a calm interest. So you need to remain calm, and this is going to help your student calm down and will not anger them more or place blame on you. Another thing that they talk about in this book is you can delay it. If you're not ready to talk with the student, push it off till the end of the day or the next morning or the next class period or study hall. Push it back until you're ready to talk about it when you will be calm. Next, give the students the opportunity to develop a new plan of behavior. So how are they going to prevent this action from happening again? And that's where these boys said, the one boy said he's going to go stand by the recess aid when he's getting angry. And the other one, he's going to go take a cool down on the bench. It needs to be meaningful for the student, not you. Number 5, let the students make their own judgment. Consequences will force the student to make their own judgment, and they are taking it. It's more meaningful to them because they're owning up to it. And the 6, you're demonstrating the problem-solving technique. This process is going to make them problem solve, and if they are not able to, this is when you can go in and model. And going back to step number 2, if they're unable to come up with their own solutions, this is when you can help them and tell them what you're thinking and how you came up with those consequences. And then number 7, you're allowing the student to feel empowered. This process will allow the student to see that they can resolve their own problems, and it's going to leave them with a sense of positive self-control. All right, the next important aspect of Love and Logic is maintaining self-concept. Students, their self-concept has 2 main characteristics, and this is true for everyone. It's fragile and easily broken, and it's conservative and resistant to change. So as teachers, we can help develop the self-concept of our students, and it's important for us to understand those characteristics. Jim Fay created a 3-legged table paradigm, and what it said is that a student's self-concept has these 3 main components, and when one of those components are weak, the rest of them are weak, and their self-concept, they're going to view themselves a lot less than they are. So there's 3 components. It's I am loved by the magic people in my life. I know more about my strengths than the weaknesses, and I can handle the consequences of my own behavior. So what it means by the magic people, it's those are the people in your life that love you unconditionally. For most students, it's who's ever taking care of them and whoever is involved in their learning. Students who feel this unconditional love, they tend to put forth extra effort to maintain their expectations as well as their relationship with the teachers. And then allowing students to show us what they're good at will help boost their self-concept. Students know what their weaknesses are, and when we give them the opportunity to show them what their strengths are, they're going to shine through, and it's going to make them feel better about themselves. And then the third one, I can handle the consequences of my own behavior. So students who have a high self-concept are able to recognize that inside pain and change their behavior. And this allows students to learn from their consequences. So what we were just talking about when administering consequences is that once students can help, once they realize that it's their own doing, their self-concept is going to go up higher because they realize it's not the people around me that are affecting me, it's myself. And once they realize it's themselves, that's when they can start to change their behavior.